I would like to call Mathew Swerdloff, Department of Educational Studies and Leadership from SUNY Paltz, New York, USA.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the invitation to Sidana, and thank you to the guests of honors and all the participants. It's been really interesting listening to the other speakers, and like Professor Jyotsna right before me, I'll be talking about the situation in the United States, specifically in New York. And I do have some slides to share. So I took a little bit of a different approach. I think actually will be helpful because there's a lot from our guest of honors about the causes of this pandemic and how it has impacted higher education in terms of instruction and online learning and finances. My approach is really to talk a little bit about the student perspectives and how students have responded at the campus where I work. Just to give you a little context, the school that where I'm employed is the State University of New York at New Paltz. New Paltz is in New York State, and it's about 90 minutes north of Manhattan by car. And so it's a suburban community. It's the SUNY system. SUNY stands for the State University of New York, is the largest public university system in the United States, very similar to the California system that we just heard about in terms of how many students are served, 64 campuses. SUNY includes colleges and universities, and so the campus site college, it's not a university, it's a college, 90 minutes from Manhattan, as I told you. And there are 4 schools in the college: fine and performing arts, science and engineering, business, and of course education, where I'm a professor in the educational studies and leadership department. There's over 7,000 students on this campus in the graduate and undergraduate program, so it's a good sized campus. And we, like most colleges and like the other people we heard from, had to deal with the impact of the pandemic in a way that met the needs of our students and our community and our campus. So this is now very familiar to what we just heard about in California. The timeline for us was on March 13th, we received notification from the governor of the state of New York that the campus, all campuses, all SUNY campuses would be closed for 2 weeks. And during that 2 weeks, the faculty were asked to convert their classes to fully online. And keep in mind, as I'm sure you're aware, those of you that teach in higher ed, many of our faculty have never taught online or were really unfamiliar with the tools. So this was a very, very difficult 2 weeks for the faculty. I know we're talking about students here, but the faculty also had some real challenges in moving from traditional face-to-face instruction to a fully online environment. And the challenges range from learning new software to rewriting their curriculum to adjusting their syllabi. So it was very, very challenging couple of weeks. 2 weeks later, classes resumed fully online. We used a combination of the school subscribes to Blackboard, which is an LMS, which we heard about earlier. Blackboard enables teachers to post all of their course content. It has discussion boards, it has file sharing, it has integrated video and image sharing tools. It's a very, very robust platform. Excellent tool. If you've never used it before, to expect to learn it in 2 weeks would be pretty challenging. And then for video, we used WebEx and Zoom, and that was up to the individual professors. And again, most of the professors had to learn it pretty quickly. And similarly, Many of our students, a majority, have never taken online classes, so they had to learn these platforms as well. So March 30th, classes started online. 1 week later, the student government, and I'm not sure about the situation, how things are configured in India, but it's typical in an American university to have a student government, which is representatives from the student body that offer advice, information, and feedback to the faculty and administration. So after 1 week of classes, the student government published an open letter to the faculty and staff talking about their experience. And again, we are a state university, so this means that a large number of our students do not come from wealthy families, where because it's state funded, tuition is less than a private university. So a large number of our students can't come from families where they're sometimes the first person in the family going to higher ed, and don't necessarily have access to technology and tools. So the rest of this presentation, I thought it would be really interesting, rather than for myself to tell you what I think students were experiencing, is to share what they said. And they wrote a very, very eloquent and very, very compelling letter to the faculty and staff on April 5th. So after the 3 weeks after the March 13th campus closing. And the rest of this presentation, I'm going to share some of the key points of that. I'm just going to escape out of this to get rid of that highlighting. 1 second. So their letter had 5 points, and it was very, very, as I said, very eloquent and very well written. And here's the first point. The students asked that the professors take the time with them and really ask, how are you holding up? And really what they wanted was personal connection. We all know, I think, how important a personal connection is between a student and a professor. And that's always the case. But in a time like this, and we heard about the trauma and the PTSD and the anxiety and the depression and all of these symptoms that began to appear, we heard about all that, and our students are going through that as well. And really what they asked was for the professors to show that they cared, very simply. The second thing they asked for in this section was to give students some extra time to kind of get settled and to get accustomed to this new way of learning in this new space. For many of these students, this is their first experience learning online, and there were many technical issues, so they really wanted to kind of slow down the pace of instruction. The next point that they made was that they asked for learning opportunities that offer connection and community. And again, we know how important connection and community is in a learning process. And it's very difficult, as we all know from the last couple of months of using Zoom, it's very difficult to have connection and community in this arena. And students really missed that, and they really wanted that, and they asked for professors to come up with creative ways to do that. And we heard, from professor right before me about breakout rooms, and that's a great tool in Zoom and in the other platforms. It's a great way to create connection and community by putting students together into smaller groups and fostering discussion. So isolation is really one of the symptoms that we learned about, and for many of these students who also do work, coming to class is a time to connect with their friends and with their professors, and they did not want to lose that. They really wanted to make sure that they could stay connected and still have their classroom community. One of the big concerns that our students had was the confusion around course requirements. The course calendar had shifted because school was closed for 2 weeks. Some of the assignments were changed. And there was not a lot of consistency between professors because everyone was sort of scrambling to figure out how to do this. Although there was a lot of support offered by the university and the college, it was a difficult time. So the students asked for really just some breathing room, some space in terms of the workload so that they could adjust to this new mode of learning. The students asked for flexibility, and as I said, many of them were online for the first time, and they really just wanted to have some forgiveness as they were learning this new tool, and also to have time to understand these new directions and these new instructions because it was very challenging. And the fifth point in the letter was they asked for kindness, which is sort of obvious, I guess, but in this time when so many students are struggling with housing, food insecurity, loss of jobs, family members' loss of jobs, even deaths. There was about 13 illnesses, 13 people contracted the coronavirus on our campus. There have been a couple of deaths here, but many of our students come from New York City area, and as you probably know, there were many, many coronavirus deaths, and that was the epicenter for New York State and for the country for a while. And the final point that they made was, you know, for some students, their numerical grade and their letter grade is really important, and they wanted to know that this situation would be taken into account in terms of their grades. So the key takeaways from the communication that we received from our students, really they were so crystal clear in what they wanted, and I think we heard really compelling evidence about what they're going through. The students was really clear on what they wanted. They wanted their professors to check in with them personally. They wanted their emotions acknowledged. They wanted someone to say, I see that you're scared, or I hear that you're afraid, to really validate their feelings. They wanted compassion from their professors. That's something that we all want, I'm sure, in this time especially, and they really need it. They wanted community because they were feeling so much isolation, and their school community is so important to them. And they wanted flexibility from the professors who would be able to adjust and adapt their syllabi and their expectations in this time of crisis. So this whole process on my campus has been really, I think, not that unique. I think many universities and colleges in the country and around the world and in India as well are struggling to figure out how to work with this, and the possibility of being remote still in the fall after the summer is very real, and we know that California is going that way. New York has not made a decision yet, but that may be the way it goes. So I think these key takeaways are really important for us to remember. You know, we are here to teach content and to provide degrees and education, but these pieces really are so important in terms of students being able to learn. So thank you so much for your attention and for this opportunity to speak, and I will stop sharing.
Thank you very much, sir. It was a pleasure listening to you. Thanks a lot again.
Thank you.